Hi, everybody. Welcome to the release webinar for Spark version 7.8.1. This release is scheduled to take place over the weekend on Saturday night, beginning at 9 p.m. Central. So you should notice the changes that we're going to cover after that Sunday, or more likely Monday. Our agenda for the day, we're going to cover some new features. We're going to go over what's changed since our last release, go over a few fixes. Emily's going to walk us through a demo, and then finally we'll have time for questions and answers. So if you do have questions throughout the webinar, you can go ahead and type those in the question and answer box in your Zoom window. All right, let's start with what's new. So first, we've introduced a new field to document the actual closing date for a package. So prior to this feature, only the estimated closing date could be captured. The new actual closing date field exists on the edit package page. That field will also be available for reporting, including via the API. Semi-related to that, this is one of the new fields that you can now capture during the process of a package stage change. So you have the ability to add any of the fields that you see listed on the right to be required fields during any package stage change. So take a glance at those available fields. Remember that you can find this list in the release notes that were included in the email that you used to register for this webinar. And if you would like to take advantage and add any of those fields to any of the stage changes in Spark, reach out to your CSM and they can help you get that set up. All right, next, if you currently use a credit integration with Spark, you can request an additional account from your provider, and that will allow you to do soft pulls that return an actual score instead of just updated trade lines. This is also a feature that requires some configuration, and your CSM can help you navigate that. Next, we added commentary fields in the risk rating and pre-screen scorecard pages. These are commentary fields that are similar to a lot of others that you find in various places in Spark. And if commentary is entered in either of those fields, it will appear in the corresponding section in your credit summary if you currently have either the risk rating or scorecard section in your credit summary. Okay, next. Let's see how well I can explain this one. All right, so on the back end of Spark and configuration, you've got your list of conditions and covenants, and you've always been able to rearrange that list, put it in any order you want, but the order that you set in the back end wasn't necessarily retained in individual packages in Spark. And the reason is those conditions were generated according to various things that were documented on the package, and they appear in the list of conditions on a package based on the order they were generated. With this release, we've introduced a setting that you can change to respect the order that's been set on the back end. So what that allows you to do, if you're used to having conditions in a set order, you can now set that on the back end. That order will be respected on individual packages on the front end of Spark. A couple kind of caveats to this. When custom conditions are added, the order resets. So if somebody were to rearrange the condition order on an individual package and then add a custom condition, the list would reorder to align with what's set on the back end. All right, so a little hard to explain, but if this is something that interests you and you want to have a consistent order of conditions, reach out to your CSM and we can help you get that set up. And then lastly, all 2021 tax forms are now able to be analyzed via the document analysis feature, including those listed here. Okay, on to what's changed. First, on February 22nd, we included the updated 2022 Nix Codes. This might require action on your end, depending. So if you have a package that uses a pre-change Nix code, and it's a Nix code that's been affected by the 2022 changes, When you submit that to eTran, you'll get an error that says invalid Nix code. So for any package that still has the 2021 and prior Nix codes that need to be updated, those updates will need to be made in the package itself, and then you should be able to resubmit. And then just kind of a quick list of additional changes that we've made. First, in all yes, no fields, those toggle buttons, the yes option now appears first. Most of you probably never noticed that they were different in some places. A few of you probably did, and it drove you crazy. So now it's always yes first, no second. Next, in accordance with SBA changes, the label for the SBA location ID field now states the field is numeric only. A new maintenance page displays during all hot fixes and Spark releases. So if for whatever reason Spark is undergoing maintenance, it won't take you to a page not found. It'll take you to a Spark branded, maintenance currently in progress page. Next, the leads listing now includes the tag column. Some lenders use the tag column to differentiate among lead sources, and the create lead endpoint also supports that tag field, so it will send that tag. And then the ever mysterious various performance improvements. And then lastly, onto the fixes. In Spark 7.8, our previous release, we updated our PFS validation to require the things listed here: assets, liabilities, PFS date. Due to feedback we've received from you all, we're no longer going to include liabilities in that validation. Next, internal users are notified when an authorized user uploads a document to Spark. And finally, the multi-select race field now includes the option prefer not to answer. Okay, just a few more. The ability to accept the risk for a loan that scores below the SLA score threshold. That ability now only applies in delegated processing methods. The new SBA submission date column on your personal dashboard package listing now is going to show the SBA submission date for all loans that have been submitted to the SBA. And lastly, we've made changes to how cookies are handled. So users are no longer going to be asked to log back into Spark after interacting with DocuSign. So then just a quick recap of the 3 features that require configuration. So if you do want to take advantage of these 3 things, this would be a time to reach out to your CSM and kind of plot a path forward here. So first, collecting that additional information with those new fields when a package changes stages. Also, if you want to take advantage of soft pulls, and then maintaining the sort order for your conditions and covenants on the back end. Okay, so with that, we're going to let Emily show us some of the features that I just outlined. Go ahead, Emily.
Perfect, thank you, Kyle. And I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Okay, can you confirm, Kyle, that we're on the underwriting page for P's Aviary Supplies?
Yep, all set.
Wonderful. All right. So like Kyle said, we're just going to do a really quick demo today. There's only a few things that we really want to show you. And part of that are the new fields that we can assign as a package transitions through the stages. So firstly, I'll show you what it looks like. Let's say we're submitting this loan to funding. You'll notice that we have the regular assignment of roles as we do with any stage transition that you have set up. But then we have this new widget that contains the additional information. So I just threw a couple on here to give you an idea of what this could look like. So we could say, maybe this is a multi-disbursement deal and you want to call that out. You could select yes or no, and then we can have that actual closing date. And what this means for you folks now is that this is going to be available in our API. So we can have a more firm idea of when the loan actually closed, as opposed to just having that estimated closing date. So any loans today that are having an estimated closing date, if we're past closing, we're going to update that to the actual closing date. But this is the field that it's pulling from. Again, we're going to be able to reference that through the package edit page. So if I were to come into package edit, I'm now going to be able to see that as we scroll down, we have all of these closing details. So estimated closing date, a note date, as well as an actual closing date. Additionally, we have some other fields that you may find beneficial as we go through this process that we didn't necessarily demonstrate here, but you could use between other stage transitions. I'm thinking about maybe pulling in that alternative package number, whether or not a loan can be sold on the secondary market, whether it requires a closing wire. We can even put in that loan purpose or package number in between stage transitions, as well as the SBA authorization date and SBA loan number. Those folks who are doing GP, you all might find that really beneficial to be able to add the authorization date and loan number, let's say as you transition from packaging into closing. So that's kind of the high level details of what it looks like to add those fields as we transition through the stages. Additionally, for those of you who are using our Meridian Link setup to do credit scoring through Spark, you can now have a soft pull. So what does that look like exactly? Well, when we come into our scoring dashboard and we expand out the details, we have the option to either order a brand new report, which will go ahead and do that hard pull again, or we have the option to refresh this report. That's where that soft pull comes in. We do need an additional set of credentials in order to do a soft pull. So it's not just going to be available right out of the gate. That is something that you do have to configure. So please work with your CSM in order to get this set up. But how this feature will work is you'll essentially come in here, click refresh the report, and then you can say, okay, for Maria, a test case, we're just going to go ahead and do Experian. Again, you have to verify that we have authorization to do a soft pull. You'll hit submit, it'll run out, hit that credit bureau and pull in that data. So now we can see, oh man, this is fantastic for Maria. She went all the way up to 785, so that soft pull was really good for her, and now she can move ahead with this loan. And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight today are the changes to those conditions and covenant. As Kyle had said previously, we can now enforce an order. And to make this a little easy for you all to see, I went ahead and threw in some numbers, so that way we can tell as we add new conditions how they're going to fall into line based on the configuration on the back end. So essentially, if I come in here to conditions of closing, and I'm going to look at my available conditions, and I have number 3, a UCC search that I could add. So if I want to go ahead and add this condition, rather than going to the bottom of the list, what it will typically do is fall into line right below my 1, 2, 3. So this is just the way, like Kyle said, to honor the numbering that you may have, or maybe you have, an A, B, C, D kind of conditions that are appearing in the list. And as we start building it out, it will then automatically populate into that particular section of the conditions as it was set on the back end. Now, if we were to add any conditions ad hoc to the list, they're always going to fall to the bottom. So let's say if I added, a number 4 right now and just said some condition here, it's not going to automatically populate below number 3 because I did not configure this on the back end to populate below number 3. It's a little jargony, but essentially that's what this means, is that if we want to enforce this, we have to configure it to enforce a certain numbering pattern, and then it will fall into line. But anything that's added on the fly is going to automatically flow to the bottom. So that's just more of an FYI for you all who want to be using this feature. But otherwise, that's really what we wanted to cover today. Again, it was a really short demonstration. There's not, a ton of changes coming into this, but we are cleaning up some other changes down the pipe. And so this will be helpful for you all as we move towards that. And let's see if we had any questions come through the chat right now.
Just one, Emily.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was asked, so the feature, adding the new fields to the stage change, it was asked, is it an option for when it changes to any stage? So no, it's not specific to the stage change. For example, going from intake to underwriting, you can add it to any of those changes. One thing to keep in mind is that because it's a required field, information, if you include it from, say, intake to underwriting, it'll be required that that field be completed before it moves to underwriting. So if you also include that field in the next stage change, there will likely already be information in there.
Yes, good point. That's exactly right, Kyle.
And then one other thing to call out quickly, manual sorting of conditions on the package is still possible. So Emily, the screen you're on right now, you could still drag number 4 below number 3. There we go. But I don't see any other questions. So we'll hang on for a few minutes. Feel free to ask questions in that question and answer box. If you don't have any questions, thanks for attending the meeting. As always, these are recorded, so you'll be able to find it on our Spark updates page. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to your CSM.
All right, hearing none, I think we'll wrap it there. Kyle, thank you all for attending today, and we'll talk soon.